The research ship Horizon's Edge moved slowly through the dark space around the dead planet. Dr. Lisa Martinez pressed her face against the viewing window and watched the ruins below. 7 months of travel had brought them here, to what used to be the home world of the Zephyrian Empire. Now it was just another graveyard floating in the void. "Take us down to the main city," Lisa said to the pilot. "We'll start with the Central Archives, same as always." Jake Thompson looked up from his communication equipment. "Are you sure we'll find anything different this time?" The last 6 sites all had the same basic layout. Dead cities, empty buildings, and those weird star charts, Lisa nodded. "That's exactly why we need to keep looking. 6 different civilizations, all gone for thousands of years, and they all left the same message. That's not a coincidence." Commander Ryan Blake checked his weapon and looked at the security team. "Remember, we don't know what killed these people. Stay alert and don't touch anything unless Dr. Martinez says it's safe." The ship landed in what used to be the main square of the Zephyrian capital. The buildings around them were tall and twisted, made of some kind of metal that had turned green over time. Strange symbols covered the walls, and broken glass littered the ground. The air was thin but breathable, though it smelled like old metal and dust. Lisa's team spread out across the square, each person carrying scanners and recording equipment. They had done this same routine 6 times before on 6 different worlds. Each time they found the same thing. Empty cities, no bodies, no signs of violence, just silence and those mysterious star charts. "Dr. Martinez," called Amy Foster from near a large building. "I think I found the archives." The symbols above the door matched the pattern we saw on Kepler 442b. Lisa walked over and studied the entrance. The door was twice as tall as a human and covered in the same twisted symbols they had seen on every dead world. She pressed her scanner against the metal, and the door slowly slid open with a grinding sound. Inside, the building was dark and cold. Their flashlights cut through the shadows, revealing rows of tall shelves filled with strange objects. Some looked like books, others like glowing crystals, and still others like nothing they had ever seen before. "Jake, start recording everything," Lisa said. "Amy, see if you can translate any of these symbols. Ryan, keep your team at the entrances." They worked in silence for 2 hours, carefully documenting each shelf and each strange object. The Zephyrians had been advanced. That much was clear. Their technology was far beyond what humans had achieved, even in the year 2387, but like all the other civilizations they had found, the Zephyrians were gone. "Dr. Martinez," Jake's voice was excited, "you need to see this." Lisa hurried to where Jake was standing near the back wall of the archives. There, carved deep into the metal, was a star chart. But this wasn't just any star chart. It was the same one they had found on 6 other worlds, showing the same star system with the same warning written below it. "It's identical," Lisa whispered. Every detail, every star, every line. Amy Foster was already working on translating the symbols below the chart. It's the same message, too. "Look at this," she pointed to the carved text. "They guard something worse. And these coordinates, they point to the Sol system. They point to Earth." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Earth, her home world. The message was about humans, about her own people. But what could it mean? What were humans supposed to be guarding? "That makes 7, Ryan said quietly. 7 dead civilizations, all with the same warning about Earth. Lisa took photos of the star chart and the message, then stepped back to think. The Zephyrians had been gone for at least 3,000 years, according to their dating methods. The civilization on Kepler 442b had been dead for 5,000 years. The ruins on Proxima Centauri b were even older. Yet they all had the same message, the same warning about Earth. "Pack everything up," Lisa said. "We need to get back to the ship and contact the Galactic Research Council. This is bigger than we thought." As they prepared to leave, Amy made another discovery. Hidden behind the star chart was a smaller carving, one they had missed on the previous worlds. It showed a figure that looked almost human, standing guard over what appeared to be a dark void. Around the figure were other shapes, twisted and wrong, trying to break free from some kind of prison. What do you think this means? Amy asked. Lisa studied the carving carefully. The human figure was small compared to the dark shapes around it, but it stood firm. Its arms were spread wide, as if protecting something behind it. The dark shapes seemed to be reaching toward the figure, but they couldn't get past. I don't know, Lisa said, but I think we're about to find out. They returned to the horizon's edge and immediately sent their findings to the Galactic Research Council on Alpha Centauri. The council was made up of representatives from 12 different alien species, all working together to explore and understand the galaxy. Humans were the newest members, having only joined 50 years ago, within hours. Lisa received a response from Dr. Kevin Ross, the council's head of xenorchaeology. His message was brief but urgent. 7 identical warnings cannot be ignored. We're sending teams to investigate every known archaeological site. Something is happening, and Earth is at the center of it. Lisa sat in her cabin and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, her home world was spinning peacefully around its yellow sun. People were living their lives, working, loving, fighting, never knowing that 7 ancient civilizations had left warnings about them. But warnings about what? What were humans guarding? And what was the something worse that the aliens were so afraid of? The questions kept her awake as the horizon's edge began its journey home. Behind them, the dead world of the Zephyrians continued its silent orbit, holding its secrets in the darkness. But now, for the first time, someone was listening to what the dead were trying to say. The pattern was clear, and it pointed to Earth. Whatever humans were guarding, it was important enough that 7 different civilizations had felt the need to warn the galaxy about it. Important enough that they had all left the same message before they died. Lisa closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but the image of the star chart burned in her mind. Earth, surrounded by warnings from the dead, keeping watch over something that ancient aliens had feared more than death itself. Dr. Kevin Ross pressed his hands against the cold stone of the ancient monument and felt the weight of millions of years pressing down on him. The ruins in the Helix Nebula were older than anything humans had ever discovered. Older than the 7 dead worlds, older than recorded galactic history itself. Amy, are you getting readings from these symbols? Kevin asked his partner, linguist Amy Foster, who was running her scanner across the carved surface. Amy nodded, her face pale in the light of their equipment. The language is different from the others, but the message is the same. They guard something worse, and look at this. She pointed to a series of star charts carved into the base of the monument. These coordinates point to the Sol system, just like all the others. Kevin stepped back and looked at the massive structure. It was shaped like a pyramid, but with angles that hurt to look at directly. The alien builders had carved warnings into every surface, layer upon layer of text in languages that had been dead for eons. But underneath all the different languages, the message was always the same. This predates everything, Kevin said quietly. The Zephyrians, the Kepler civilization, all of them. This warning is older than any of the dead worlds we've found. 3,000 light-years away, on Earth, Dr. Susan Clark was having her own moment of discovery. She sat in her office at the University of Chicago, surrounded by stacks of ancient books and historical documents. For weeks, she had been searching through human mythology, looking for any clue about what her species might be guarding. Susan opened another old book and began reading. The stories were from different cultures, different time periods, but they all shared common themes. Stories of watchers who stood guard against the darkness. Tales of sentinels who must never sleep. Myths about humans being chosen to keep something terrible from escaping. The Watchers at the Gate, Susan read aloud from an ancient Sumerian text. They who stand between the light and the endless dark. They who must never falter, never yield. Never let the sleepers wake. She turned to another book, this one from medieval Europe. The Guardians of the Threshold, it said. Placed by the old gods to watch over the prison of shadows. Should they fail, the world shall know darkness eternal. Susan felt a chill run through her. These weren't just stories. They were too similar, too specific. Cultures that had never met each other, separated by thousands of years, all telling the same tale about humans being guardians of something terrible. Her computer chimed with a message from the Galactic Research Council. They wanted all human historians to search their records for any mention of humanity's role as guardians. Susan realized she wasn't the only one making these connections. Meanwhile, in the council chambers on Alpha Centauri, tension was building. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from 12 different alien species, all arguing about what to do with the new information. 7 warnings cannot be ignored, said Ambassador Zeth of the Altarian Federation. His blue skin gleamed under the chamber lights, and his forearms gestured angrily. These dead civilizations are telling us something important about the humans. The pattern is clear, agreed Representative Kala from the Rigel Commonwealth. Her insect-like features clicked as she spoke. Every advanced civilization that has ever encountered Earth has left the same warning. Perhaps we should listen to them. The human ambassador, Dr. Patricia Wong, stood up to address the chamber. My people have done nothing to threaten the galaxy. We've been peaceful members of this council for 50 years. These warnings might mean something else entirely. Or, hissed Ambassador Vex of the Serpentine Collective, your people are hiding something from us. Something that scared advanced civilizations into leaving warnings for future generations? The debate continued for hours, but no decisions were made. Some species wanted to quarantine the Sol system immediately. Others wanted to investigate further. A few suggested that humanity should be removed from the Council entirely until the mystery was solved. Back in the Helix Nebula, Kevin and Amy were making more disturbing discoveries. Deep beneath the pyramid, they found chambers filled with more carvings. These ones were different, showing not just warnings but actual images of what the ancients feared. Kevin, you need to see this, Amy called from the deepest chamber. Her voice echoed strangely in the ancient space. Kevin climbed down the narrow stairs and found Amy standing before a wall covered in carvings. But these weren't symbols or star charts. These were pictures. Scenes carved in stone that showed a story. The first image showed a galaxy full of stars and planets, teeming with life. The second showed dark shapes moving between the stars, consuming everything in their path. The third showed the stars going out, one by one, until only darkness remained. They're showing us what they were afraid of, Amy whispered. Something that eats stars, that consumes entire systems? Kevin studied the next series of carvings. They showed beings working together, building something massive around a single star system. The star system looked familiar. It was the Sol system, shown, with 9 planets and a yellow sun. They built a prison, Kevin said. Around Earth, around humanity. The final carvings showed small figures standing guard over the prison. The figures looked human, but they were drawn with strange proportions, as if the alien artists had never actually seen humans before. But why humans? Amy asked. Why would ancient aliens choose a primitive species to guard their prison? Kevin didn't have an answer. But as he looked at the carvings, he noticed something else. The human figures in the images weren't just standing guard. They were growing stronger, more numerous, more advanced. It was as if the prison was designed to grow stronger as humanity developed on Earth. Susan Clark was reaching the same conclusion. She had found references in dozens of human cultures to the idea that human progress was somehow tied to keeping something imprisoned. Every time humans achieved something new, every time they grew stronger or more advanced, they were somehow strengthening the chains that held back the darkness. We're not just guards, Susan said to her empty office. We're the key. We're the lock. We're the prison itself. She sent her findings to the Galactic Research Council, not knowing that similar discoveries were being made all across the galaxy. Archaeological teams were finding older and older warnings, all pointing to the same conclusion. Humanity wasn't just randomly chosen to guard something. They were created for that purpose. As the reports came in from dozens of different worlds, a picture began to form. Ancient civilizations had known about a great threat, something so terrible that they had worked together to imprison it. And they had placed that prison around Earth, with humanity as the living key that would keep it locked forever. But the warnings weren't just about what humans were guarding. They were about what would happen if humanity ever failed in their task. If the prison ever broke open, if the guards ever fell asleep, something worse than death would be released into the galaxy. The council members, who had been arguing about quarantining Earth, suddenly had a new fear. What if removing humanity from their homeworld would weaken the prison? What if the ancient warnings were right, and humanity really was all that stood between the galaxy and something infinitely worse? In the depths of space, the ancient ruins continued to whisper their warnings to anyone who would listen. But now, for the first time in millions of years, someone was finally starting to understand what the dead were trying to say. Captain Danny Hayes had been exploring deep space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like the ruins at the galactic core. The stellar wanderer floated silently near a massive structure that seemed to bend space around itself. Stars in the distance looked warped and twisted, as if reality itself was being pulled out of shape. "How old do you think this is?" asked Dr. Helen Murphy, the ship's xenobiologist. She was staring at the readings on her scanner, but the numbers didn't make sense. "Older than anything we found," Danny replied. "The radiation signatures suggest this structure has been here for billions of years, maybe longer." The structure was enormous, bigger than entire solar systems. It was made of some kind of dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered every surface, and energy readings showed that it was still active after all these eons. "Captain," called engineer Marcus Kane from the bridge, "I'm getting some kind of signal from inside that thing. It's not random. It's organized, like a recording." Danny nodded. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered to life, showing images that made the crew step back in shock. They were looking at what appeared to be a historical record, but the events shown were beyond anything they had imagined. The recording showed the galaxy as it had been billions of years ago, full of advanced civilizations and countless species. But then something changed. Dark shapes began moving between the stars, things that existed partially outside normal space. Where they passed, stars went out. Entire systems simply vanished, leaving nothing but empty void. "What are those things?" Helen whispered. The recording continued, showing the dark entities consuming system after system. They didn't just destroy planets or kill populations. They unmade everything, removing matter and energy from existence itself. They left behind regions of space that were completely empty, not even containing the basic particles that made up reality. "Void harbingers," Danny read from the alien text that appeared on the screen. "That's what they called them. Entities from outside our galaxy that consume everything they touch." The next part of the recording showed something incredible. Dozens of advanced civilizations working together, pooling their knowledge and technology to fight the Void Harbingers. But conventional weapons were useless against entities that existed in multiple dimensions at once. "They couldn't kill them," Marcus said, studying the technical readouts. "The Harbingers were too powerful, too alien. So they did something else." The recording showed the construction of a massive prison, a containment field that would trap the Void Harbingers in a pocket dimension. But the prison needed something special to power it, something that could provide the energy needed to hold beings of such incredible power. "They needed guardians," Helen said, understanding dawning on her face. "Living beings whose consciousness could fuel the containment field." The recording showed the selection process. The ancient civilizations had studied thousands of species, looking for the perfect guardians. They needed beings who were aggressive enough to fight, stubborn enough to never give up, and adaptable enough to grow stronger over time. "They chose early humans," Danny said quietly. "Our ancestors weren't just primitive apes. They were selected and modified to be the perfect prison guards." The recording showed how the prison was built around what would become the Sol system. The Void Harbingers were lured into the trap and contained in a pocket dimension that overlapped with normal space. But the prison wasn't just made of technology. It was powered by the consciousness of the guardian species placed nearby. Every time humans fought, every time they refused to give up, they were strengthening the prison, Helen said. Our aggression, our stubbornness, our refusal to surrender even when things look hopeless, it's not a bug in human nature, it's a feature. The recording showed more details about how the prison worked. Human emotions, particularly the drive to protect and defend, created a kind of psychic energy that fed into the containment field. The more humans there were, the stronger they became, the more powerful the prison grew. But why didn't they tell us? Marcus asked. Why keep it secret? The final part of the recording answered that question. The ancient civilizations had realized that if humans knew they were guardians, they might make different choices. They might become complacent, or they might try to abandon their duty. The prison only worked if humans remained true to their nature, fighting and striving and never giving up, because that was simply who they were. So they designed us to be guardians without knowing it, Danny said. Every human achievement, every time we've overcome impossible odds, every time we've stood up to bullies or fought for what's right, we've been feeding energy into a cosmic prison. The recording ended with a warning. The prison was not perfect. It required constant maintenance and periodic reinforcement. If humanity ever stopped being human, if they ever lost their fighting spirit or their refusal to surrender, the containment field would weaken. And if the prison fails? Helen asked. Danny looked at the massive structure around them, then at the empty spaces where star systems used to be. Then the Void Harbingers escape, and they finish what they started billions of years ago. They consume everything in the galaxy, leaving nothing but empty space. The crew of the Stellar Wanderer spent the next several hours exploring the ancient facility, downloading everything they could find. The record showed that the prison had been tested and reinforced many times over the eons. Every major crisis in human history, every war, every struggle for survival, had actually strengthened the containment field. World War II, Marcus said, reading from one of the files. The containment field was at its strongest during that conflict. The sheer determination of humans to fight against impossible odds, to never surrender even when facing extinction. It fed massive amounts of energy into the prison. And every time we've gone to space, Helen added, every time we've pushed beyond our limits, we've been adding new layers to the containment field. The prison grows stronger as we grow stronger. But the records also showed something troubling. The prison was showing signs of wear after billions of years of operation. The containment field was still strong, but it needed to be renewed periodically. And the time for renewal was approaching. How long do we have? Danny asked. Marcus checked the calculations. According to these readings, the prison needs major reinforcement within the next few decades. If it doesn't get it, the field will start to weaken. And if it fails completely? Then the Void Harbingers break free, and they won't make the same mistake twice. They'll consume everything, starting with the Sol system and working outward, until the entire galaxy is empty. Danny looked at his crew, then at the ancient warnings carved into the walls around them. Every dead civilization they had discovered had left the same message because they had all learned the same terrible truth. Humanity wasn't just another species in the galaxy. They were the last line of defense against something that could end everything. We need to get this information back to Earth, Danny said. Humanity needs to know what they really are. What they've always been? As the Stellar Wanderer prepared to leave the galactic core, the ancient structure continued its billion-year vigil. The warnings of the dead civilizations finally made sense. They weren't afraid of humanity. They were afraid of what would happen if humanity ever failed in their cosmic duty. The galaxy had been saved by human stubbornness, by the refusal to give up even when faced with impossible odds. But now the question was whether humanity could consciously choose to remain guardians, knowing the full weight of what they were protecting the galaxy from. The emergency meeting at United Earth Command had been going on for 12 hours. Captain Danny Hayes stood at the front of the room, his face tired but determined. Around the table sat the most important people on Earth, all trying to understand what he had discovered at the galactic core. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," said President Maria Santos, her voice steady despite the shock in her eyes. "You're telling us that humanity was created to be prison guards for cosmic monsters that eat reality itself?" Danny nodded. "That's exactly what I'm saying. The ancient records are clear. Every major event in human history, every time we've fought against impossible odds, we've been strengthening a containment field that keeps the Void Harbingers trapped." General Robert Kim, head of Earth's military forces, leaned forward. "And this prison is failing?" "The containment field is weakening," Danny confirmed. "It's held for billions of years, but it needs to be renewed, and we're running out of time." As if responding to his words, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Captain Lavara Bell, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet, rushed to the main display screen. Her face went pale as she read the incoming data. "Sir, we're getting reports from the outer system monitoring stations. Strange gravitational anomalies beyond Pluto. The deep space sensors are showing readings that don't match anything in our databases." "Show me," Danny said, already knowing what they would find. The main screen lit up with images from the edge of the solar system. Where there should have been empty space, reality itself seemed to be bending and twisting. Stars in the background looked wrong, stretched, and distorted. And in the center of the distortion, something dark was moving. "That's impossible," whispered Dr. Amanda Foster, Earth's top physicist. "Space doesn't behave like that. It's like the laws of physics are breaking down." "It's not breaking down," Danny said grimly. "It's being consumed. The Void Harbingers are testing the prison walls." Over the next few hours, the situation got worse. The monitoring station near Neptune went silent first, then the one near Uranus. Each time a station disappeared, the gravitational distortions grew stronger. Long-range sensors showed empty patches of space where matter simply didn't exist anymore. "It's starting at the edges," observed engineer Marcus Kane, who had arrived on Earth with Danny's team. "The prison is weakening from the outside in. The Harbingers are pushing against the containment field, looking for weak spots." In the Galactic Council chambers, panic was spreading. Representatives from 12 different species were arguing loudly, their voices echoing off the walls. Many were demanding immediate evacuation of their home worlds. "The humans have failed as guardians," declared Ambassador Zeth of the Altarian Federation. "We must flee before the prison breaks completely." "Where can we go?" asked Representative Kala from the Rigel Commonwealth, her insect-like features clicking with anxiety. "If these Void Harbingers consume the entire galaxy, there's nowhere to run." Dr. Patricia Wong, Earth's ambassador to the Council, stood up to address the chamber. "My people didn't know about their role as guardians. Now that we do, we can work together to find a solution." "Work together?" hissed Ambassador Vex of the Serpentine Collective. "Your species has had billions of years to strengthen this prison, and it's failing anyway. What makes you think you can fix it now?" The debate continued, but several species had already begun evacuating their worlds. Ships loaded with refugees headed for the edge of the galaxy, hoping to escape whatever was coming. But the smartest aliens knew the truth. If the Void Harbingers broke free, nowhere in the galaxy would be safe. Back on Earth, Marcus Kane was working frantically in his laboratory, trying to understand the ancient technology that powered the prison. The alien systems were incredibly complex, far beyond anything humans had created, but they were also failing. "The containment field is like a giant battery," Marcus explained to his team. "It stores energy from human consciousness and emotions, then uses that energy to keep the Harbingers trapped. But the battery is running low. Can we recharge it?" asked Dr. Helen Murphy, who had been studying the biological aspects of the prison. "System, not with our current technology," Marcus replied. "The original builders used sciences we don't even understand. But maybe we don't need to understand it. Maybe we just need to give it more power." "What kind of power?" Helen asked. Marcus pulled up a display showing global human activity. The prison feeds on human determination, on our refusal to give up. During major conflicts, when humans are fighting for survival, the containment field gets stronger. We need to create that same level of determination, but on a global scale. Outside? The effects of the weakening prison were becoming visible. The aurora borealis appeared at latitudes where it had never been seen before. Strange lights danced across the sky, and sensitive people reported hearing whispers in languages that didn't exist. Dr. Bell was coordinating the defense of Earth's outer system, but her ships were powerless against an enemy that existed, partially outside normal space. Every time her fleet tried to engage the distortions, the Void Harbingers simply moved to a different dimension. "We can't fight them with conventional weapons," Lavra reported to Earth Command. "They're not entirely in our reality. It's like trying to punch a shadow." Danny studied the tactical displays, watching as more monitoring stations went dark. "We're not supposed to fight them directly. We're supposed to keep them in prison. But the prison is failing because we didn't know we were supposed to be maintaining it." The truth was becoming clear to everyone involved. Humanity's role as guardians wasn't just about existing. It was about actively choosing to fight, to resist, to never give up even when facing impossible odds. But for thousands of years, humans had been living in relative peace, not knowing that their cosmic duty required them to maintain their fighting spirit. "The prison is powered by human defiance," Danny said to the assembled leaders. "Every time we faced extinction and refused to surrender, we've been feeding energy into the containment field, but we've gotten comfortable. We've stopped fighting the really big fights. So what do we do?" Asked President Santos. Danny looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. "We do what humans do best. We fight. We refuse to give up. We face impossible odds and spit in their face. Against what?" General Kim asked. "The Harbingers are in a different dimension." "Against despair," Danny replied. "Against the temptation to run away, against the idea that we can't win. The prison doesn't need us to fight the Harbingers directly. It needs us to fight for the will to keep them trapped." As if responding to his words, the distortions in the outer system suddenly intensified. The planet Pluto flickered and disappeared, not destroyed but simply removed from existence. The empty space where it had been was perfectly smooth, as if the planet had never existed at all. "It's accelerating," Marcus reported, his voice tight with fear. "The prison is collapsing faster than we calculated. We have days, not weeks." Around the world, people were beginning to notice the changes. The strange lights in the sky were getting brighter. Electronics were malfunctioning, some people reported. Dreams of endless darkness, of voices calling them to simply stop fighting and let go. "They're trying to break us psychologically," Helen realized. "The Harbingers can't break out of the prison by force, so they're trying to convince us to stop being guardians." The whispers in people's minds grew stronger. They promised peace, rest, and end the struggle. All humanity had to do was stop fighting, stop resisting, stop being stubborn. It would be so easy to just give up, but Danny Hayes looked at the people around him and saw something the Void Harbingers didn't understand. They saw humans who had spent their entire history fighting against impossible odds. They saw a species that had crawled out of caves and built civilizations, that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars, that had looked at the stars and decided to reach for them. "Send a message to every human on Earth," Danny said. "Tell them the truth. Tell them what we really are. Tell them that the galaxy is counting on us to be exactly what we've always been: stubborn, defiant, and too stupid to know when we're beaten." The message went out across the planet, carried by every communication system on Earth. For the first time in human history, the entire species learned their true purpose. They were not just another intelligent race among many. They were the guardians of reality itself, the last defense against entities that would consume everything. The question now was whether humanity would choose to accept that burden, knowing the full weight of what they were protecting the galaxy from. Dr. Angela White stared at the ancient computer terminal deep beneath the Swiss Alps. The machine had been hidden there for thousands of years, waiting for humanity to become advanced enough to activate it. Now, as reality tore apart at the edges of the solar system, the old AI systems were finally coming online. "Are you sure this thing is safe?" asked Marcus Kane, watching strange symbols scroll across the screen. The terminal was unlike any technology he had ever seen, built by the same aliens who had created the prison around Earth. "Safe is relative," Angela replied, her fingers moving across controls that seemed to respond to her thoughts rather than her touch. "But we need answers. The prison is failing faster than we calculated, and we're running out of time." The screen flickered, and suddenly a voice spoke in perfect English. It was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It sounded like the sum of every human voice that had ever existed. "Greetings, children of Earth. I am the Guardian Protocol, created by your makers to guide you when the time of choosing arrives." Angela stepped back from the terminal. "Our makers? You mean the aliens who created the prison?" "Not created," the AI corrected. "Modified. Humanity existed before the prison, but you were changed to serve as its living key. Your consciousness, your emotions, your refusal to surrender. These traits were enhanced to power the containment field." Marcus leaned closer to the screen. "Enhanced how? What did they do to us?" The AI displayed images that made both scientists gasp. They showed early humans, but not as history books described them. These humans had strange markings on their skin, devices implanted in their brains, and eyes that glowed with inner light. "Your ancestors were volunteers," the AI explained. "When the Void Harbingers first appeared, many species offered to become guardians. But only humanity possessed the right combination of traits: aggression balanced with compassion, stubbornness combined with adaptability, the ability to hope even when facing certain death." Angela watched the images change, showing how the modifications were passed down through generations. "The genetic changes became part of our DNA. That's why humans are so different from other intelligent species. We were designed to be different." "But the modifications did more than enhance your natural traits," the AI continued. "They connected you directly to the prison's power systems. Every human birth strengthens the containment field. Every act of courage adds energy to the barriers. Every time you choose hope over despair, you reinforce the walls that hold back the darkness." The screen showed a real-time display of the prison's status. Lines of energy connected every human on Earth to a massive grid that surrounded the solar system, but many of the lines were flickering and some had gone dark entirely. "What's happening?" Marcus asked. "Why are the connections failing?" "The Void Harbingers have learned to speak directly to human minds," the AI said. "They whisper promises of peace, of rest, of an end to struggle. Each person who listens, who chooses to give up, weakens the prison." Angela felt a chill as she realized what that meant. Around the world, people were starting to hear the whispers. In New York, a businessman sat down in the middle of a busy street and refused to move, saying he was tired of fighting. In Tokyo, entire families were found sitting quietly in their homes, staring at nothing, no longer responding to the outside world. "How many have we lost?" Angela asked. 12 million and counting, the AI replied. "The rate is accelerating. The Harbingers are becoming stronger as they partially breach the prison. Their influence over human minds is growing." Marcus checked his communication device and saw reports flooding in from around the globe. Hospitals were filling with people who had simply stopped trying to live. They weren't sick or injured. They had just lost the will to continue existing. "There has to be something we can do," Angela said. "Some way to fight back against their influence." The AI was quiet for a moment, processing data at incredible speed. "There is one option. The prison was designed with a failsafe, a way to boost the containment field in case of emergency. But it requires a conscious choice from humanity as a whole." "What kind of choice?" Marcus asked. "The choice to fully embrace your role as guardians, knowing what it means. The original modifications were hidden because your makers believed you would serve better without knowing your true purpose. But now the prison is failing, and only conscious choice can save it." The screen displayed a schematic of Earth showing energy lines connecting every major population center, If humanity chooses to accept their role as guardians, the modifications in your DNA will activate fully. You will become living conduits for the prison's power, connected not just to the containment field but to each other. Angela studied the display. What would that mean for us? What would we become? Still human, but more than human. Your empathy would allow you to share strength across the species. Your determination would become a force that transcends individual will. You would be connected to every other guardian, able to draw on the collective spirit of your entire race. Marcus understood the implications. A hive mind? Not a hive mind, the AI corrected. A guardian network? You would remain individuals, but you would share a common purpose. The stubborn refusal to surrender that defines humanity would become amplified across your entire species. Outside, the situation was getting worse. The planet Neptune had vanished, entirely consumed by the growing void. The distortions were now visible from Earth, dark patches in the sky where stars had simply stopped existing. And the whispers in people's minds were getting stronger. Choose peace, the voices said in 1,000 different languages. Choose rest. Why fight when you can simply let go? Why struggle when you can have eternal quiet? Around the world, more people were giving up. In hospitals, patients who had been fighting terminal illnesses simply closed their eyes and stopped trying. In schools, children sat at their desks and refused to learn, saying there was no point in knowledge. In laboratories, scientists abandoned their work, claiming that discovery was meaningless. We're losing them, Angela said, watching the energy display flicker as more connections went dark. How many do we need to keep the prison stable? At current consumption rates, you need at least 70% of humanity actively choosing to remain guardians. You currently have 62% and falling. Marcus felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. If we activate this failsafe, what happens to people who don't choose to be guardians? They will be protected, but they will no longer contribute to the prison's power. The burden will fall entirely on those who choose to accept it. Angela looked at Marcus, then back at the screen. And if we don't activate it? The prison fails completely within 18 hours. The Void Harbingers escape and begin consuming the galaxy, starting with Earth. The choice was becoming clear. Humanity could remain as they were and likely face extinction, or they could consciously choose to become something more. They could accept the full weight of their role as guardians, knowing that it would change them forever. How do we activate the failsafe? Angela asked. The AI displayed a new interface. The choice must be made by humanity collectively. Every person on Earth must decide whether to accept the guardian role or not. Those who choose to become guardians will be connected to the network. Those who refuse will be left alone but protected. Marcus thought about his family, his friends, everyone he had ever cared about. How do we ask 7 billion people to make this choice? The same way your species has always made the hard choices, the AI replied. Together with courage and with the stubborn belief that tomorrow can be better than today. Angela placed her hand on the activation control. Around the world, every communication system would carry the message. Every human being would learn the truth about their species and be asked to make the most important choice in galactic history. The question was whether humanity would choose to remain guardians, knowing the full cost of what they protected the universe from. The message went out to every human on Earth at exactly 14:30 GMT. Television broadcasts stopped mid-sentence. Radio stations cut to emergency frequencies. Cell phones buzzed with the most important communication in human history. Dr. Angela White's voice, calm but urgent, spoke to 7 billion people at once. Citizens of Earth, this is Dr. Angela White speaking on behalf of the United Earth Command. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but it is the truth about who we are and why we exist. Captain Tony Garcia listened to the broadcast from the bridge of the Earth's Fury, the flagship of humanity's combined fleet. Around him, stars were disappearing one by one as the Void Harbingers pushed harder against the failing prison. Saturn had vanished an hour ago, simply erased from existence. You are not just humans, Angela's voice continued across all communication channels. You are the guardians of the galaxy, chosen and modified by ancient aliens to keep cosmic monsters imprisoned. Every time you fight, every time you refuse to give up, you strengthen the walls that hold back creatures that would consume all existence. In New York City, construction worker Mike Torres stopped his bulldozer and stared at the radio. Around the world, similar scenes played out as billions of people learned the truth about their species. Teachers in classrooms, farmers in fields, doctors in hospitals, all stopping to listen to words that would change everything. The prison is failing, Angela continued. These entities called Void Harbingers are breaking free. They speak to your minds, promising peace if you stop fighting. But if enough of you give up, they will escape and destroy not just Earth, but every living thing in the galaxy. Captain Tony felt the ship shake as another gravitational wave passed through the solar system. Jupiter was flickering now, partially existing and partially consumed. His weapons were useless against an enemy that existed in dimensions humans couldn't even understand. We're asking you to make a choice, Angela's voice said. Choose to remain guardians, knowing the full weight of what that means. Choose to be connected to every other human who makes the same choice. Choose to stand against the darkness, not because you have to, but because you want to. The response was immediate but mixed. In hospitals around the world, patients who had been giving up suddenly opened their eyes. Maria Santos, a grandmother in Mexico City who had been ready to stop her cancer treatment, sat up in her bed and pressed the button to call for her doctor. I'm not done fighting yet, she said, but others made a different choice. In London, banker James Wright set down his phone and walked away from his desk. I'm tired of fighting, he said to no one in particular. Let someone else be the guardian. The energy connection that had linked him to the prison network went dark. Tony watched his tactical display as the Guardian network activated around the world. Bright lines of energy connected major population centers, creating a web of human consciousness that spanned the globe. But there were dark spots too, places where people had chosen to opt out. 68%, reported his communications. Officer, 68% of humanity has chosen to become active guardians. It wasn't enough. The AI had said they needed at least 70% to maintain the prison. Tony could see the results on his scanners. The containment field was still weakening, and the Void Harbingers were pushing harder against the barriers. Then something unexpected happened. Ships began appearing around Earth, thousands of them from every corner of the galaxy. The alien species that had fled in panic were returning, led by Ambassador Zeth of the Altarian Federation. Human fleet, this is Ambassador Zeth, came the transmission. We have been wrong about your people. We see now what you truly are, and we have come to stand with you. Tony couldn't believe what he was seeing. Altarian battlecruisers, Rigel, Commonwealth destroyers, even ships from the suspicious Serpentine Collective. Every species that had once feared humanity was now joining the fight. We cannot power your prison, Ambassador Zeth continued. But we can fight beside you. We can show the galaxy that Guardians do not stand alone. The alien ships moved into formation around Earth's fleet, creating a wall of united resistance against the darkness, but the real battle wasn't in space. It was happening in the minds of every human who had chosen to remain connected to the Guardian network. The Void Harbingers spoke directly to human consciousness now, their voices like ice water in the minds of billions. Why do you fight? They whispered. Why choose struggle when you can have peace? Why accept responsibility when you can be free? But for every voice that whispered of surrender, there was a human voice that answered back. Mike Torres, still sitting in his bulldozer, thought about his daughter's first steps. Because someone has to, he said out loud. Because if we don't fight, who will? Across the network, similar moments of defiance rippled through human consciousness. Dr. Susan Clark, the historian who had first discovered the pattern in human mythology, felt the connection to millions of other minds. We fight because it's who we are, she said. We've always been the ones who stood up to bullies. The Guardian network began to pulse with shared determination. Every human connected to it could feel the strength of every other Guardian. Mike Torres felt the courage of a teacher in Beijing who refused to abandon her students. Dr. Clark felt the determination of a firefighter in São Paulo who had never given up on a rescue. 71%, Tony's communications officer reported. We're gaining people instead of losing them. On the tactical display, the containment field began to stabilize. The energy flowing from Earth to the prison barriers increased dramatically, as more humans made the conscious choice to fight. The connection wasn't just powering the prison anymore. It was amplifying human nature itself. The Void Harbingers realized what was happening and pushed harder. Reality tore open near Mars, and one of the entities partially emerged into normal space. It was impossible to look at directly, a thing of angles and darkness that hurt the mind to perceive. All ships target the distortion, Tony ordered. The combined human and alien fleet opened fire, their weapons having no direct effect on the Harbinger, but disrupting its ability to maintain a foothold in their dimension. But the real weapon wasn't the ships or the energy beams. It was the network of human minds, all choosing to fight at the same moment. The collective refusal to surrender created a wave of psychic energy that slammed into the partially emerged Harbinger like a physical force. The entity recoiled, pulling it back into its prison dimension. Around the solar system, the tiers in reality began to seal themselves as the containment field strengthened beyond its original design parameters. They're retreating, reported the sensor operator. The prison is holding. But Tony knew this wasn't over. The Harbingers would try again, and next time they would be better prepared. The Guardian network would need to remain strong. Humanity would need to remember who they really were. Send a message to all ships, Tony said. Thank our allies for standing with us. Tell them that Guardians never forget their friends. Dr. Angela White's voice came over the communication system one more time. Citizens of Earth, you have made your choice. You have chosen to remain guardians, to stand watch over the galaxy's most dangerous prisoners. This burden will pass to your children and their children after them, but know this, you do not stand alone. The galaxy stands with you. Around the world, humans who had joined the Guardian network felt the truth of those words. They were connected. Now, not just to each other, but to every species that had chosen to support them. They were guardians, but they were not alone. The prison held. Earth continued its orbit around the yellow sun, and 7 billion humans went back to their daily lives, carrying with them the knowledge of who they really were and what they protected. They were guardians, and they would never surrender.